How you understand the tax system depends on what your agenda is. There are alternative ways of analyzing budgets, there always have been, and there's nothing innocent about doing it. People who approach it have a choice of ways of doing so. If they're honest, they tell you that. That's why I'm trying to tell it to you now. But if they're not, they present one perspective, one way of thinking about it, as if it were the only way or the right way, and that just won't do. It's a little bit like acting as if one particular religion is the correct and right one and everybody else is wrong, versus understanding religions as different ways of trying to deal with certain issues in human beings' lives. Okay, the budget. First problem. What do you count as a tax? After all, the federal government's budget begins by looking at where does the money come from. And there's a frequent shorthand that runs like this. Oh, everything that comes to the government is a tax. Well, not really, because the word tax is not so clear. For example, if you take a certain portion of your income and call it a tax and send it to the government, and they use it for everything that comes up as an expense, from fixing the roads, to helping college students with loans, to financing the Social Security system, and so on, okay, that might make sense, but that shouldn't get the same name as, for example, a deduction from your wage every week that is set aside by the government to be given back to you when you're age 65, because then what the government is doing is actually running a pension program. Social Security, Medicare, and so on, these are insurance systems. They take money out of you, like paying a premium, and then they give you something back. You as an individual, in fact, what you get back, it has some relationship, certainly in Social Security, with what you put in, etc. Whereas a general tax payment doesn't have that. You can use the word tax for both of them, but it hides more than it reveals, which is not a good sign. So let me be blunt with you. For me, I separate what we pay to the government that it uses in general from what we pay to the government because it's running a insurance program for us like Social Security. Once you do that, once you see that money in, say, to be eligible for Medicare when you're 65, or money in to be eligible for a Social Security pension payment every month, etc., these kinds of things really ought to be considered separately. And if you do that, then it becomes crystal clear what the overwhelming cost of the taxes we pay, the money that isn't geared to taking care of us in our old age, or in the case that we have medical needs, particularly after we're 65. When you look at that, the real kind of tax as tax part, then the overwhelming use of our money is for defense, for the military. And there it simply reminds us all that the United States spends more on military than the next 7 countries after us. And those countries include China, Russia, and so on. So we spend more money than the next 7 combined spend. Nobody is even close. And our taxes pay for that. It's, of course, a perfectly legitimate question whether the taxes we pay are excessive for the defense we get. It's also legitimate to ask whether we need a defense now that we have really nothing like the enemy, the Soviet Union, that we used to use to justify these expenses. But it is a taboo topic in the United States, which is a very good thing for the companies that produce the goods and services that the United States military spends all our tax money on. And the periodic scandals about that should surprise nobody.